Hello, everyone. Welcome to Paper Movies. I have Adam with me as well as Noah, and we are talking about Alien 3 by Alan Dean Foster, the book that nearly made Alan Dean Foster quit writing novelizations. This is the second or third novelization we've read that caused that. Because Hook did that for Terry Brooks, and George Lucas basically begged him to do the Phantom Menace. And wasn't The Mask like one that caused Steve Perry a bunch of grief too?
I want to say yes. Yeah, I remember I think it was The Mask. Yeah. We're looking it up.
Yep.
So, anyway, what is Alien 3 about? Well, it's just about the biggest downer you could possibly have for an Alien sequel. Facehuggers end up on the Sulaco, causing a malfunction that causes our heroes to be jettisoned to a planet called Fiorina 361 instead of 161, where Ripley is the only survivor. Fiorina 361 is a penal colony where there's a handful of inmates that kind of maintain an old ore mine. And a xenomorph ends up getting loose, and Ripley's the only one that knows kind of what's going on, and a hilarity ensues. But this xenomorph is different. It's more, well, it's weird. It's weird compared to all the other versions of Alien 3. So
like this one actually came out of a dog instead of a person.
Well, this comes out of an ox this time. This is the original version. So they tried to give it ox traits. Kind of. There's a lot of kind ofs that happen because this went through so many rewrites that, like, Alan Dean Foster wouldn't come back to do Alien Resurrection.
I found a wonderful quote by Foster about that, if you are curious.
Yes.
Okay. I didn't do Alien 4 Alien Resurrection because they wouldn't leave me alone. I had done the first two. I did the third one, and I thought the third script was much too dark for Alien. I thought that killing the little girl takes away Ripley's motivation for living too, so I fixed a lot of that stuff. In Alien 3, I did motivations and histories for all the convicts. Walter Hill, though, he said, take all that out, write the original script, and it would be a much better book. And instead of writing a letter saying that I did the first two and that James Cameron was perfectly happy with that, I threw out all that original stuff and just did it straight. And that's why I didn't do Alien Resurrection. I didn't want to have to go through all that all over again. Usually they leave me alone. And then he did a break after this for 12 years. And the novelization he did after this one was Chronicles of Riddick.
Okay. We'll have to check that out sometime.
I forgot that he wrote that one.
He wrote Terminator Salvation's novelization too, and would come back to the series because he did Covenant's novelization, which is what the most phoned for him, saying that it's like kind of phoned in for this. It doesn't feel that way, whereas Aliens is phoned in. I didn't get to say my opinion on Aliens, the novelization. It was not on that paper movie, so I'll give my opinion. It's boring and very adequate, with no swearing. That's like the big takeaway from it. That's my thing. And I remember being like, because I wanted to go through all these Alien novelizations, and I remember reading Alien, loving that novelization, then reading Aliens, being like, ugh, this is blah. And so I never bothered to read this. And then I'm glad I read it because it's infinitely better than Aliens. This might be one of the better versions of Alien 3.
Oh yeah.
I'm gonna just go ahead and say I didn't care for it.
Okay.
And I was kind of chuckling, Jeremy, because you said Aliens was boring and adequate with no swearing, and I was just like, huh, that's kind of how I feel about this one, but it has swearing.
I was about to say, to be fair.
I normally really appreciate Alan Dean Foster's work. I really do. I think he's a great writer, but this one just could not grab my attention, and I was I I just it was I was just it wasn't like it was hard to keep up with, but it was just like I didn't really have any motivation to want to keep reading it. And so, I mean, and I just rewatched the movie and I was like, wow, I'm still not too impressed with the movie either. But I think I enjoyed the movie maybe just a little bit more. But to be fair, I'm going to say this. I might at some point give the novelization another chance just to kind of, now that I've rewatched the movie. But
that's what I was curious about, because I mean, this is a novelization of a very controversial movie to begin with. Obviously.
And Alien 3 on top of this, because I'm in this era right now with my Aliens reading of the comics. There was so much Aliens garbage coming out at this time. They had, I think, 5 different series going on at the same time for Aliens. It was insane. The comic adaptation for Alien 3 is far worse than this. It's some of the worst art I've ever seen in a comic. It's 3 issues. They shat it out last minute. It's overly rushed. Everyone looks the same, which is everyone's problem with the film, because it's a bunch of angry bald men, bald British men. That's kind of the Alien 3's like big thing. It's a brown film with angry bald men.
you mentioned Alan Dean Foster spoke about like Ripley's reaction to Newt's death, and I kind of wish that was in there because like I mean, she does like react to it, but it's just kind of like, oh no. But then like 2 scenes later, it's past. And it was just like, I mean, she spent like a good portion of the movie, like the previous movie, like trying to save her and everything. And I was just like, and I know that the actress that played Newt couldn't, I think she quit acting after that movie or just didn't pursue it. And they just kind of, instead of just explaining it, they just said, we'll just kill her off screen or something like that. So
here's the thing. Here's the thing. There were a lot of scripts for Alien 3. William Gibson's is probably the most famous. There was another one with a wooden planet, like a man-made wooden planet with monks, where the xenomorph would seduce them. And Giger put like human lips on a xenomorph because he was addicted to Quaaludes. So like he made this, like he made a bunch of concept art for this thing, and the 20th Century Fox said, how about we just do prisoners and we get rid of all that nasty weird sexual stuff with it seducing people. There was like a whole scene where like they were sitting on like an outhouse and the xenomorph would come out of like the toilet and pull them in or something. There's just so many weird things with Alien 3. And like originally they didn't think Sigourney Weaver would want to come back. So William Gibson's script deals with Hicks as the protagonist, and Bishop's also in there. It's a Hicks and Bishop story, and they send Newt and Ripley away before things get really weird. And if you ever get to read the they did a novelization for that. Pat Cadigan wrote it. It's very good. There's also a comic that Dark Horse did near the end of Dark Horse's reign with the Aliens IP. That's okay with some good art. But this was Sigourney Weaver. They're like, well, we have to have Sigourney Weaver come back. We need to have someone come back. And Sigourney Weaver said, I'll come back if I die, so I don't have to make another one of these.
That aged poorly.
Yeah, that she says that there's a documentary of the making of Alien 3, and she says that. So they didn't even ask Michael Biehn to come back. They didn't ask her the little girl that played Newt to come back. I mean, she would have been a lot older by then. This is 93 when this finally came out. Mm-hmm. But it was Michael Biehn's, I believe, agent found out that they had made lifelike dummies of Hicks and Newt to have them dead in their cryo chambers, and Michael Biehn threatened to sue 20th Century Fox over it.
Yes, there's something that I love. There's this famous interview he gave where he talks about who's the director? David Fincher. They forced him to call Michael Biehn and tell him, and then ask Biehn, like, hey, can we at least, use a picture of you? And Biehn is very open. He was very, very angry on the phone.
His career was kind of falling apart around this time. He was expecting that the third Alien movie would be like, he would have the starring role and his acting career would take off. Instead, he did The Abyss, which is he's the villain in that. Some bad movie. And when was Tombstone? That's like the last big movie he did around that time.
Tombstone, I want to say 1993.
Okay. And again, villain role. He wanted to be that action hero, and he didn't get to. And his acting career was kind of falling apart. So he was pissed. That's why Hicks is all torn up in like the theatrical cut. And in this, they do that a bit. This is a weird amalgamation of some of the theatrical cut and mostly the assembly cut. Because there's no Max the dog in this. That's the one of the big changes. It is the Ox, which, if you've ever seen the assembly cut, looks terrible coming out of. They actually shoved a marionette puppet through an actual dead ox. It's disgusting, but it also looks janky AF. The dog looks better, although it's sadder. It makes me more upset. I love Rottweilers. It's sad that happens. If you watch the fan edit of the Legacy cut, they kind of combine the two. So Max the dog's still there. The dog burster, as it's called, the dog alien, is still a thing. And it makes more sense coming out of a dog because it's all weird and small. Except for close-ups.
Which is mentioned in this book, that the alien is actually bigger.
Yes, it actually has the traits of an ox. But yeah, I will say though, a lot of the dialogue that's in the novelization of the two guys butchering the ox when it's dead before the Bambi burster. That's what it's called. The Bambi burster was the nickname for it. Comes out because it got little legs like Bambi. But before it comes out, a lot of that dialogue that's in the novelizations in the assembly cut, they leave that in the Legacy cut, and they also show that weird face hugger for the Queen because Giger redesigned one of the face huggers to look more like the Queen alien from Aliens, which I bet you pissed him off because he didn't design the Queen alien. So James Cameron says, "We don't need that guy. I can draw myself," which which he can. James Cameron was a matte painter before he was a director. But still, H.R. Giger was kind of butthurt about that back in the day. But he got to design things for Alien 3, and they used pretty much none of them. Human lips on a xenomorph.
It's kind of funny, like you mentioned, Sigourney Weaver would come back only if she died. And I'm like, I think that's what Harrison Ford said about The Force Awakens.
Yeah. But the irony is she came back afterwards. Did
So
resurrect? Well, yeah. But he was a ghost. I had forgotten he's in Rise of Skywalker.
How can you forget? That's one of the greatest cameos of all time. That is a side note, but it is my favorite because Harrison Ford in that scene, he looks like they just dragged him out of bed. He's hungover. He's clearly unshaven. His hair is unkempt. And they just put him in front of a green screen.
I forget because Mark Hamill as a Force ghost catches a lightsaber rays throwing into a bonfire like immediately after that, which is also stupid. But let's not talk about one of the most cinematic wet farts of all time. Instead, talk about Alien 3, which is, some would say, is a cinematic wet fart, but I would not agree with that.
Well, it is a controversial movie, that has to be said. I think it got elevated in recent years because what came out since in this franchise has been so much worse.
Yeah, everything that has come out since Alien 3, and General Lotz, I'll fight you on that because he will die on the hill that Resurrection is better than Alien 3. I disagree. Resurrection is a stupid movie. It's not as stupid as the AVP movies. It's not as stupid as Prometheus and what followed after that, and nothing's as dumb as Alien Earth, where grown adults act like children because they're child brains in adult android bodies, and one of them can speak xenomorph at the xenomorph. That's something that happens. Because Disney.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I said because Disney.
Yeah. I was going to ask, what do you think of Alien 3, Noah?
The movie or the book?
Both, starting with the book.
Starting with the book. I like the book. I think it does a good job, first of making the story clear because it has some more little explanations that are pretty neat. It has different dialogue, which I appreciate, and it changes some scenes slightly. Foster adds a little bit more, I'm going to say, humanity, some jokes as well. Like, I really like the final scene with Ripley and Bishop, when he's damaged and stuff, and they joke a little bit. And it just adds like a little flavor. That's something that I would have liked with Newt, like you said, with Ripley's reaction and stuff. Mm-hmm. Because the way she's talking with Bishop there in that scene feels more heartfelt in a way.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, in total, I really enjoyed this one. I like it better than his Alien novelization.
Really?
Which is good, but was a little bit dry for me.
See, I don't like it that much. I do like there's a nod to his novelization, though. Mm-hmm. And he talks about the how that original xenomorph on the Nostromo had cocooned people up and it was turning them into eggs.
Yeah.
Which is a thing. It's a concept that's kind of come back in the current canon. I believe that they see that in AVP Rift War. There's a nod to that, of all things. But yeah, I like that. It's a little too talky at times. There's a little over explaining. I get why he's doing that because the script's an absolute mess. And so you kind of have to do that. I like Clemens. I like that we get Clemens' perspective up until we lose Clemens. And in fact, it's his perspective over Ripley's, where Clemens is kind of the protagonist for about the first half of the book. That's kind of neat.
his death was a little bit different.
Oh,
Like,
it was awesome.
I was gonna say, like in the movie, the xenomorph, like, impales through his head, and I think in the book, unless I'm thinking of someone else, I think in the book he is straight up decapitated.
Yep.
Yes, he is decapitated. Also,
What a loss of Charles Dance.
yeah. He's a neat. What is y'all's opinion of him and Ripley hooking up? That upsets a lot of people. I've known a lot of people that makes them genuinely angry.
I mean, I'm not really upset because I like Charles Dance and this character.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of that hate obviously comes from the fact that, Higgs and stuff, that was a thing that was kind of set up, and,
I don't know. I don't know if I have an opinion on it.
Yeah, I don't mind it. What an interesting thing that's kind of brought up in this a little bit, which was probably in his earlier drafts of the novelization, is Dylan's attraction to Ripley. We haven't talked about Dylan too much, the leader of the prisoners and their weird religious group, and how there's a really interesting paragraph where he talks about how he's thinking to himself that if he had met Ripley earlier in his life, he would have been reformed and he would have never done the things he did, because he did horrible things. Because he murdered and raped people. They're all violent, awful criminals that have basically found God, as the warden puts it, at the ass end of space.
I remember that being said, yeah.
Kind of interesting.
I will say the novelization got a little bit better near the end. I mean, obviously with like all the ensuing hilarity, but yeah, it didn't catch me in the beginning, and I was just, I don't know, like if I have to force myself to kind of keep going through it, I don't know, it just kind of ruins the whole book for me. But I am glad that we read it though, because it's been a while since we've done anything like with the Alien franchise, and wanted to keep it going. So
yeah, it's been too long, I think.
I think Aliens, when me and Matthew talked about it, was like 2 years ago.
Yeah, it was right when I went back to school. It was the month I went back. No, I was on my last vacation before going. That's right. Yeah. But one last thing I do want to talk about that's different. Oh, Cleo is saying hello to everyone.
Hi, Cleo.
Is the prisoner Gallic and his obsession with the xenomorph and letting the xenomorph out, which is in the assembly cut, but not in the theatrical cut of the film. I'm glad that's in there, and I'm glad we get a definitive what happened to his body, because that's not in any other version of Alien 3. And it's so weird. There are so many versions of Alien 3. We've got multiple games, because Alien 3 got video games for some reason. It has a NES, SNES, a Genesis version. There's the Alien Trilogy for the PS1, which kind of does a weird amalgamation of the 3 games into a Doom clone FPS, which is kind of fun. Unfortunately, you have to use the D-pad on the PlayStation 1 controller, which is not fun. But we got that. We have a comic adaptation that is really rushed. We have this novelization, and we have 4 cuts of the film that are known and kind of available. We have the theatrical version, the assembly cut, which is not a director's cut. When they did back in 2003, they did this wonderful 9-disc box set called the Alien Quadrilogy. And James Cameron had already done his director's cut, which is the 92 special edition of Aliens. But Ridley Scott came back and did a director's cut of Alien, and the weird French man that directed Alien Resurrection did a director's cut of Resurrection. And so the editor of Alien 3, because David Fincher has disassociated himself from this film. He's only just started speaking about it in the last couple of years, but he would deny he even made it.
Didn't he famously say nobody hates it more than me?
Yes. Well, he got fired, and they wouldn't give him final cut of his own film.
Yeah, and as we know, the making of for him was a nightmare.
Yeah, and when they did this DVD box set, the editor came back and said, "Let's use the footage," because a lot of like Max the dog stuff and like a lot of the stuff that's in the theatrical cut, all reshoots in LA. Like this film was just a hellish process to make. Can we just go into ranking?
I want to play it safe and reread it at some point. But based on like my initial like reading of it, I'm going to give it a C.
Okay. Noah.
As a ranking with points and stuff, this is kind of difficult. I mean, it's my favorite Alien novelization so far, which doesn't mean much because I've only read 2 of them. I would give it a good B, maybe a B plus, if you will. It's not quite A. I think if Foster had been allowed to add some more of his original stuff, like he said, like more backstories for each inmate, that would have been nice, probably. You know, just fleshing this out a little bit more. But I'm glad with what we have. I think he did a pretty good job. And I'm glad it's mostly based on the assembly cut, because I think everyone agrees that's the much superior version.
Yeah, if you can't get a hold of the legacy cut, the fan edit, the assembly cut's the next best thing.
Jeremy?
I'd give it a 3.8 out of 5. My big downside with this is it's forced to be a little too talky. And that's because the script is bad. And so Alan Dean Foster has to fix it with over amounts of dialogue. So anyway, that's all for tonight. We'll see you next time.
We'll reveal which novelization that we'll be talking about coming up pretty soon. So yeah, stick around for that. And it was glad we got to talk about it.
All right. Have a good one, everyone.